Sound check, 1, 2, 3, sound check.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call this meeting of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee to order. Just a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during our committee meetings. Please note that quorum is present. As we move forward through our roll call, I'll announce the names, and if I can just get everyone to acknowledge that they're present. Councillor Kretsch has sent his regrets. Karen Burke has sent her regrets. Graham Carroll.
Present.
Andrew Douglas.
Present.
Lynn Lundstedt.
Present.
Andy McLaren.
Present.
Stefan Spalnik.
Present.
Thank you, everyone. Before we jump into our agenda and begin our meeting, I did want to say a few words. We recently learned some sad news about a former member of our Municipal Heritage Committee, the passing of one of our friends and colleagues. Will Rosart passed away on June 5th, and a memorial and funeral service was held on July 5th. Will served as a volunteer citizen member of our Municipal Heritage Committee for 2 terms of council, from 2010 to 2014, and then again in 2018 to 2022. So during those 8 years on our Municipal Heritage Committee, he volunteered with our Education and Communication Working Group. He volunteered with the Policy and Design. He attended conferences on our behalf, took part in our various activities, and then in his final term was chair of the Policy and Design Working Group. Will was really passionate about history and heritage. He was a collector of everything Hamilton, artifacts and books. He took part in a lot of different projects, and I know he was quite involved with working with Bill King. And over his lifetime, I know he was very proud of the time that he had spent on the head of the Lake Historical Society. And Will actually had helped spearhead the creation of their very first issue of their newsletter in 1978. He became one of their youngest guest speakers, and so from a very early on in his professional and volunteer career, heritage was always the root of that. So I just wanted to say that will be missed. Our thoughts and prayers are with Dorothy, his wife, and with his family and his friends and colleagues. In honor of our dear friend Will, if we could just take a brief moment to pause and remember the time that he shared with us. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, there are no changes to the agenda.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I see Graham and Lynn.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Are there any declarations of interest today? Seeing none, we'll move on to our approval of the minutes from our previous meeting. We have before us the minutes from June 24, 2024. May I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I see Graham and Andy.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We move on to our staff presentations. Before us is 8.1 is a recommendation to designate 85 King Street East in Dundas under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, PED 24124 in Ward 13. We have Marissa Burris, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, is here to give us a presentation.
Hello. So my name is Marissa Barris, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, and I'm presenting on staff's recommendation to designate 85 King Street East in Dundas. The property at 85 King Street East is comprised of a 1-story stone house constructed circa 1846 to 1848 and 2 recent frame outbuildings in the community of Dundas. Whoa. The property was first surveyed for potential heritage interest in the 1970s. Between 1979 and 80, a developer proposed the demolition of the building, which turned the property into a focal point for community heritage organizing and caused Dundas Town Council to consider its designation. The Town Council at the time, however, was not supportive of the designation. In 1981 and 1987, the local Architectural Conservation Advisory Committee issued notice to the town expressing interest in designating the property again, neither of which were acted on by the town. On January 17th, 2024, staff received a request from the owner to designate the property, and during a site visit on March 12th, 2024, the owner expressed continued interest in designating the property. On April 22nd, 2024, staff advised the owner of the recommendation to designate the property, provided them with a copy of the proposed statement of cultural heritage value or interest, and on May 27th, 2024, staff advised them of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee meeting that the recommendation would be considered. Here you can see a summary of the staff evaluation, which determined that the property meets 5 of the 9 criteria for designation. So the property has physical value as a representative example of a 19th century stone cottage influenced by the Regency style of architecture, and as one of the earliest dwellings to have been constructed in the area. The building has a square plan with a rear stone wing that served as a summer kitchen, and it also has an additional rear brick addition housing stairs to the basement, which dates to the 19th century. A covered front porch was added in the early 20th century, sometime prior to 1930. Some key details on the building include its cut stone facade with corner coins, broken coarse fieldstone side and rear walls, stone voussoirs and tooled stone lug sills, and a 4-panel solid wood door with a transom window and flanking side lights. The property also features a modern detached accessory building constructed using reclaimed materials in 2016 to serve as an art studio and workshop. It's not considered to display a high degree of craftsmanship or high degree of technical or scientific achievement. 85 King Street East has historical value for its association with prominent contemporary and historical Dundas community members, organizations, and events. The building was originally built for John Fairgrieve, a Scottish immigrant who's believed to have come to Canada in 1832. Fairgrieve was an active citizen in the area, working as a wharfinger, likely with an interest in the Desjardins Canal, and serving as a town councillor in 1850. In 1859, the property was sold to Margaret Grafton, who was affiliated with the local business Grafton & Co. Limited, as the mother of the store's co-founder, James Beattie Grafton. Margaret's other son, John Stuart Grafton, was also affiliated with the family business and is listed in city directories at this address in the 1870s. The property was sold several times in the mid-20th century before being purchased by Yield Investments in 1977 as part of a block to allow for the construction of a 44-unit residential building. Yield Investments' proposed development included the demolition of 3 historic buildings and became a central concern for community heritage advocates affiliated with the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, the Dundas Heritage Association, and the King Street East Citizens Group. Advocates wrote many opinion editorials, participated in town council meetings, and hosted several community meetings, even drawing the attention of notable Canadian historian Pierre Burton, who made an appearance in Dundas to express support for saving the properties. Eventually, in 1980, Joanna Chapman, a prominent Dundas resident who served on Dundas's town council from 1980 to 1985, owned Chapman and Prince Booksellers, founded the Urquhart Butterfly Garden, and has been active in Dundas's environmental and historic conservation movements, purchased the property with intent to conserve and maintain the dwelling. Chapman never lived on the property, but instead rented it to Catherine Gibbon, who was also a notable community advocate, a landscape artist, student, and teacher at the Dundas Valley School of Art, and a co-founder of the Carnegie Gallery. 85 King Street East helps maintain the historic character of its surrounding area. It has contextual value and is historically and visually linked to its surroundings due to its proximity to the Desjardins Canal, connections with the early Coote survey, and wooded character with mature trees. The area surrounding the property was originally intended to develop as Dundas's urban core, centered around the canal, whose full potential was never realized as the 19th century expansion of rail diverted shipping and travel routes away from water routes. As one of the oldest remaining dwellings in the east end of Dundas, the property also contributes to the historic and industrial landscape, and the property is not considered to be a local landmark. Here you can see a short summary of the criteria for your reference, with a full version of the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value Interest available in Appendix B of this staff report. And here is a short summary of the criteria, here's a list of the heritage features identified to be included in the designation. A full list can again be found in Appendix B of the staff report. And finally, here is a summary of staff's recommendation, which again can be found in report PED 24124. Questions?
Thank you, Marissa. Do we have any questions? Graham?
Comment. Thank you for the fantastic presentation. Did a really good job on that. I appreciate it. And I'd like to put my appreciation to the property owner for approaching us for designation. I wish more would do that. It makes our life much easier to save buildings when they want them saved.
Are there any other questions from our members? Seeing none. So we have before us the presentation. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive Marissa's presentation?
I see Graham and Lynn.
Okay, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried, and we'll now move on to the report. So we have the recommendations as were outlined just a moment ago are before us. Are there any questions in regards to the report or those recommendations? If there's not, may I have a mover and a seconder to put the report recommendations on the floor?
I see Andrew and Lynn.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Thank you, everyone. Item 8.2 is the recommendation to designate 7 Rolfe Street in Dundas, known as the Leonard House or Mushroom House, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, PED 24125 and Ward 13. So again, we have Marissa to give us a presentation.
Hello again. Marissa Barris again, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, presenting on staff's recommendation to designate 7 Rolfe Street in Dundas. The property at 7 Rolfe Street is comprised of a 2-story cantilever pedestal dodecagon, which means 12-sided, house constructed in 1971 in Dundas. The property has been part of architectural tours since the 2000s for its unique form. In August of 2023, staff received a request from the owner to designate the property. After conducting a site visit on April 19th, 2024, and conducting an evaluation of the property, staff determined the property met criteria for designation. In an email dated May 22nd, 2024, staff advised the owner of their recommendation, along with a copy of a draft statement of cultural heritage value or interest, at which point the owner expressed their continued support for designation. While staff do not typically recommend to designate interior features in buildings, the owner in this case expressed interest and support in designating particularly significant interior features. Here you can see a summary of the staff evaluation, which determined that the property meets 8 of the 9 criteria for designation. 7 Rolfe has physical value as a rare example of a dodecagon contemporary dwelling. Designed in 1969 and constructed in 1971, it's the only documented example of either a pedestal or dodecagon dwelling in Hamilton, and is believed to be the only pedestaled dodecagon dwelling in Canada. Report PED 24125 provides a full list of features identified, but briefly they include the dodecagon pedestaled footprint with rear porch extension and design, deep soffits with embedded lights, cedar board cladding, 12 facet roof raised central skylight with decorative collar, including its interior opening lined with stained cedar, a stained cedar ceiling lining the main living areas, a steel frame porch and bridge with angled vertical plank fence, a lower level rounded glass bay, and an interior spiral staircase in the glass bay, and the surrounding landscape, including an exterior cut stone staircase and planter features, as well as a lower circular walkway around the dwelling's pedestal. The dwelling shows a high degree of craftsmanship and artistic merit in a few of its features, including the steel cantilever pedestal form, the design of the steel frame porch and bridge, including its vertical plank fencing, the central skylight and collar, and the stained cedar detailing in the interior of the building. The steel cantilever pedestal also demonstrates a high degree of technical achievement, given that it was a new technological innovation at the time and was used deliberately by architect Harry Leonard to support the main living area of the building above ground level, away from flooding, given that the property's location in the Sydenham Creek floodplain, with the creek pictured here, causing flooding over the site. The property meets two historical and associative criteria. It has value for its connections with the Leonard family, including the building's architect, Harry Leonard, and with the Clarks. The building was originally designed by Harry Leonard for his parents, Samuel Bertram and Gladys McInnes Leonard. The Leonard family is associated with the historic Dundas apparel business, S. Leonard and Sons Limited, which opened in 1879 and was best known for producing knit underwear, employing as many as 200 Dundas workers at its peak. It remained a family business until it was sold in 1969. In addition to Seven Rolfe, Bert and Gladys Leonard also owned the property at 36, previously 35, Cayley Street, which directly abuts the rear limit of Seven Rolfe. The Leonards, including Harry, lived on this property for several decades, with intent for Seven Rolfe to serve as a smaller retirement home for Bert and Gladys. Famously, Harry recalls that his father was a major inspiration in the design of the house, given that he had wanted to live in a circular house for quite some time. The dodecagon shape was chosen over an octagonal one for that reason, and at this time in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a general trend in architectural innovation inspired by imaginations of the future and relationships between humanity and nature, prompting an interest in pedestal forms for their tree-like properties. By the mid-1960s, the technology needed to construct cantilever pedestal buildings had been developed, allowing Harry to realize his father's vision, highlighting the local impact of architectural innovations on Canadian communities at the time. The intentional and artful design of the property is well defined in its relationship with the creek nearby, and the raised nature of the main living areas embedding the building in the surrounding tree canopy, supporting surrounding natural features. In 1989, the property was sold to Marjorie Hawkins and Hugh Clark. Hugh Clark was a notable Hamiltonian, having served as CEO of the Adam Clark Company Limited, founded in 1877 by his grandfather. He also made an impact in Hamilton with a strong interest in local philanthropy, founding the Clark Family Foundation with his brother and the Marjorie Hawkins Clark Fund after Marjorie's death in 2007. The property also meets criteria for reflecting the work of a notable architect through Harry Leonard, who, as I mentioned, has strong familial ties to Dundas and played important roles in the construction of major Hamilton landmarks, like the theatre complex, then known as Hamilton Place, now named First Ontario Concert Hall, and the restoration and the interior reconstruction of St. James Anglican Church in Dundas. Harry opened a private practice in 1979, through which he undertook a broad range of projects, including several more detached residences in Burlington and renovations and additions to schools in Milton. The property does not yield or have the potential to yield information that contributes to an understanding of a community or culture. Seven Rolfe is important in defining the character of the area, being indicative of experimental trends in housing design in the second half of the 20th century. And it's also visually and historically linked to its surroundings through its relationship with 36 Cayley Street and Sydenham Creek. It's additionally linked to the historic evolution of Dundas's residential landscape in the 20th century. And the property is considered to be a landmark with its unique mushroom shape standing out in the surrounding landscape. You can see here a short summary of the criteria for your reference with a full version of the statement of cultural heritage value interest in Appendix B of the staff report. And here is also a summary list of the heritage features identified to be included in the designation. This list, again, can also be found in Appendix B of the staff report. And I want to draw your attention quickly to the inclusion of interior features, which again were added at the owner's request to protect the interior skylight opening, stained cedar walls and ceiling, and the wood spiral staircase. Finally, here's a summary of staff's recommendations, which can be found in Report PED 24125. Questions?
Thank you again, Marissa. Any questions or comments? Any from our online members? No? Again, thank you for that great presentation, and again, extending thank you to the property owners for being so supportive. Very good. If there's no other questions, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation?
I see Graham and Andy.
And if there's no one opposed, that item is carried. We now move on to the report. Do we have a mover and a seconder to put the report recommendations on the floor?
I see Andrew and Lynn.
And in regards to the recommendations that are before us that were just up on the screen there, are there any questions? Any questions in the report or those recommendations? Seeing none, as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Thank you, everyone. And we move on to 8.3, which is a recommendation to designate 6 Webster's Falls Road, Flamborough, Springdale, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, PED 24122, Ward 13. We have Scott Dickinson, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, is here to give us a presentation.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Scott Dickinson, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, and this is a recommendation to designate 6 Webster's Falls Road, Flamborough, known historically as Springdale. Oh, does this thing not want to go forward? There we go. This property is located on the southern side of the terminus of Webster's Falls Road in the area known historically as Bullock's Corners in the community of Flamborough. This property was first listed on the Municipal Heritage Register in 2018 when it was added to staff's designation work plan, and it was reprioritized for designation by January 1st, 2025 in March of 2023. Staff recommend a designation for this property as it meets 6 of the 9 criteria laid out under Ontario Regulation 9-06. Pardon me. This property has design and physical value. This 2.5-story stone structure, constructed circa 1856, is a representative example of a Georgian Revival dwelling. Features typical of this style include its symmetrical 5-bay front elevation, the side gable roof with flanking stone chimneys, the 6/6 hung windows, and the central entrance with side lights and transom. This property also displays a high degree of craftsmanship through the well-dressed and closely fitted cut stone masonry on the front and side elevations, the wooden door surround on the front entrance with side lights and transom, the carved decorative keystone in the lintel over the central entrance, which you can see in the top of the photograph on the left, and then the twin stone chimneys in the peaks of the gable roof, as shown in the photograph on the right. This property has historical and associative value for its associations with Joseph Webster II and the Ashbourne Mill Complex. Joseph Webster II was a successful farmer, miller, politician, and road builder in 19th century Flamborough. He inherited lots 10 and 11 in the first concession of West Flamborough Township from his father James and his grandfather Joseph I, both of whom purchased land in this area in the early 19th century, neither of whom seem to have lived in this area, however. For Joseph II, as a teenager, he did end up growing up in this area, having been taken in by the Green family of Greensville. The Greens taught him the milling trade, and evidently he was quite close to them. In 1832, when Joseph II inherited his father and grandfather's land, he also took the opportunity to marry the Green's daughter, Maria. Since lots 10 and 11 in the first concession do cover Webster's Falls itself, but the vast majority of the land is below the escarpment. It's excellent farmland, or at least it was. Joseph focused at first in the 1830s on farming, and he called his farm Springdale. 20 years later, by the early 1850s, Springdale Farm was apparently very impressive, to the point where the enumerator of the 1851 census felt that he should make special comment on what he felt was a superior farm in a superior location. Clearly, Joseph was doing quite well. He was also getting involved in both local politics and local affairs. He was responsible for the construction of several local roads, including the section of what is now Highway 8 that leads between Bullock's Corners and Dundas, still in use today. He was also one of the first councillors of the Municipal Council of West Flamborough in 1850 and was later reeve of West Flamborough Township. While he's building roads and getting involved in politics, Joseph is also changing his career focus. In the 1850s, he begins selling off in parcels the farmland of lots 10 and 11, and he switches his focus to milling. In 1856, the Ashbourne Mill, along the edge of Webster's Falls, was constructed, and shortly thereafter, the subject property, the 2.5-story stone house, was also built, which Joseph also named Springdale after the farmhouse he had below the escarpment. The Ashbourne Mill was a very successful operation. It was expanded several times in Joseph's lifetime to include facilities for grinding rye and barley, a cooperage for barrel production, and even a mill for making cotton batting. After Joseph II's death in 1886, his descendants, though they retained ownership of the house, sold the surrounding land and the mill to George Harper and William Merrill, who operated the mill until it was destroyed by fire in 1898. In 1899, George Harper installed a very early hydroelectric plant near the site of the Ashbourne Mill, which was used to provide electricity for Dundas's streetlights, but this was also destroyed by fire in 1901. In 1917, the town of Dundas purchased the land, including the ruins of the Ashbourne Mill, for use as a public park, which of course remains in that usage today. You can see in the left-hand image, this is from the 1859 Surtees map of the county of Wentworth. You can see the Ashbourne Mill. There's lots of variant spellings, Ashbourne, Ashburn, it's up to you. And in the background, of course, we can see the subject property. And as this township map, we can see that star, that six-pointed star indicates the location of the Ashbourne Mill, very close, as you can see, to the edge of Spencer's Gorge and right where Webster's Falls is today. This property has contextual value. It is important in defining the historic former industrial character of Bullock's Corners. Throughout the 19th century, the area along the Spencer Creek, upstream from Dundas, stretching from Bullock's Corners to Crook's Hollow, was known for the many mills and other water-powered industries which produced a variety of products from flour, timber, linseed oil, plaster, blankets, most famously paper. This landscape today has become a series of popular conservation areas with very little visual evidence of its industrial past, beyond homes like this, the surviving homes of the mill owners. By the way, this turn-of-the-century photograph here shows, of course, the subject property in the background. That wooden bridge is the Ashbourne Mill Dam. That's where the stone arch bridge over Spencer Creek is now in Webster's Falls Park. And the scan of the image isn't perfect, but behind that wooden bridge, you can just see the walls of the burnt-out Ashbourne Mill, which were still standing then and no longer are today. This property is historically, visually, functionally, and physically linked to its surroundings. This house is built into the topography of its original location, built along the historic Spencer's Creek waterway and close to Webster's Falls. This mill owner's house is a short distance from the ruins of the former Ashbourne Mill. And of course, this property, being a large and visually distinctive structure located near the popular and well-known natural feature of Webster's Falls, has been featured in a number of publications about the history of West Flamborough and is considered to be a local landmark. These foregoing criteria are summarized here in the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest. The full version of this statement is, of course, in Appendix B of Report PED 24-122. That appendix also includes this description of heritage attributes, which will inform the writing of a heritage bylaw for this property. These heritage attributes include all 4 elevations and roof line of this stone dwelling, including its rectangular plan, stone chimneys, side gable roof with plain box cornice and projecting eaves, its symmetrical 5-bay front elevation, the dressed closely fitted stone walls, its windows with stone lintels and sills, the central front entrance with its wooden surround, and its stone foundation, as well as its key contextual attributes, including its location fronting onto Webster's Falls Road and its proximity to both the Spencer Creek and, of course, Webster's Falls itself. And of course, staff recommend that the city clerk be directed to give notice of council's intention to designate this property as a property of cultural heritage value.
Thank you, Scott. Another great presentation. Do we have any questions for Scott? Anything from our online members? No? No? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation?
I see Graham and Lynn.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried, and we'll move on to the report. Do we have a mover and a seconder to put the report on recommendations on the floor?
I see Andrew and Stefan.
Okay, and those recommendations are as Scott had just put up on the screen. Is there any questions in regards to those recommendations? Seeing none, as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one in opposition, that item is carried. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the staff team for continuing all of that work for those designations. It's great to see so many coming forward, and I know it's a lot of work to do, so thank you. We move on to our consent items. We have before us item 9.1, 9.2, 9.3. May I have a mover and a seconder to put those consent items forward?
I see Stefan and Andy.
Are there any questions? We have before us the Heritage Permit Review Subcommittee meeting minutes. We have Policy and Design Working Group meeting minutes and delegated approvals. Any questions? Seeing none, as we move on to vote, is there anyone opposed to receiving? Seeing none, that item is carried. And we move now on to our general information items. 13.1 is our buildings and landscapes. Do we have anyone that would like to provide updates, or is there anyone that would like to add any properties or delete any properties from our list? Graham?
Usual St. Giles.
St. Giles, okay. We'll just create a speakers list. Is there anyone else that wants to provide any reports today? No, so just Graham? Okay.
Yeah, we've had some more problems with former St. Giles with a little bit of mess on the property, but Kindred Works have been really fast at responding. And now they're starting to block cars from parking in the parking lot. So hopefully we get some of that mess out of the parking lot. It'd be interesting to see how the neighbors in the neighborhood's going to like that.
Thank you, Graham. Again, is there any other updates in regards to properties? If not, may I have a motion to mover and a seconder, a motion to receive those updates?
I see Stefan and Andy.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed to receiving? Seeing none, that item is carried. To staff, are there any updates in regards to any items? No? Okay. Is there any other business from our members today?
Kind of curious if been any discussion yet on the holding the Heritage Conference here, or if anyone's any update on that?
Through the chair, Ken Coit, Director Heritage and Urban Design. Yes, we've had some initial conversations with the committee chair, and we will be working to discuss with Tourism and Culture over the next couple of weeks, with hopefully a report back in August.
Any other new items? If not, we'll move for our adjournment. Do we have a mover and a seconder to adjourn today's meeting?
I see Andy and Andrew.
And if is there anyone opposed? If not, that item is carried. And just looking ahead to our next meeting, August 19th at 12 o'clock. All right, so everyone enjoy the rest of the summer until we see you in August. Thanks, everyone. Take care.